Howdy, it's Jim Morado in my home state, actually at the capital of Kentucky, Frankfort. We're actually driving around the capital right now, and we're about to take a tour. They were very nice and let us know that it was okay to videotape the tour, which I thought was pretty cool. So we drove around a little bit and ended up taping the tour. We had a great guide. And they only give tours Monday through Friday, so we had a day off and decided to just go to Frankfort, which is a fun town anyway, and check things out. I guess more on Frankfort later. We drove through the cemetery, which famously may or may not include Daniel Boone. Oh yeah, we're driving by the flower clock, the famous flower clock at the Capitol. I honestly don't know a ton about that, but I remember coloring pictures of that at Utica Elementary School when I was growing up, when we did our history lessons. But yeah, we were just driving around on this day before going in to take the tour. I'm not going to say too much. Our tour guide did an incredible job, so I'll let him do the talking. Just so you know, the intro, there's a bell ringing, and I didn't know where the bell was coming from until right at the end. But I guess every day at 10 o'clock they ring a bell for each county in Kentucky that has lost someone to COVID. So I thought that was kind of sweet. Yeah, so you'll hear that in a moment. And there's the governor's mansion. Interesting story about the governor that they'll probably, I think he tells on this tour, about somebody trying to take a tour and then trying to make their way to the governor's office, which I thought was very interesting. Nice people here. There was a security guard that was obviously into history. Our tour guide was into history, and we really enjoyed this tour. So check this out. I might talk a little bit if our guide's not talking, but yeah, check it out.
Does that mean we go or
every day they bring that bell 120 times for every time it walks to the river. So it'll be done in 2 minutes. Well, for those of us from outside the state or from outside of Frankfort, welcome to Kentucky. Welcome to the Kentucky State Capitol building. We're very glad that you're here. I hope that you like it and that you learn a lot. My name is Nick. I'll be showing you all around today. All photography and videography is allowed. Feel free to take a photo of or film anything. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. So this is our 4th state capitol building. The 3rd still stands just across the river over on Broadway Street. The first 2 stood on that same site, however they both burnt down. We don't suspect anything suspicious or criminal like arson. We think it was something normal and natural like a fireplace getting out of hand. We started to outgrow the 3rd one in 1830, and we wanted to acquire the money to build a new one. We got a big breakthrough on that when the federal government awarded us $1.3 million for 2 main reasons. Firstly, damages incurred during the Civil War, and secondly, services rendered during the Spanish-American War of 1898. We designated that money for a new Capitol building fund. We acquired another $1 million in the General Assemblies of 1904 and 1906. We broke ground on this location in 1905. Construction was completed in only 4 years in 1909, and we moved in the following year in 1910. We've been in here ever since. The building is done in the Beaux Arts architectural style, B-E-A-U-X. The architect was one Frank Mills Andrews. He was an admirer of 2 main styles of architecture. Firstly, French, and secondly, classical. Both are on display here in the Rotunda room, especially with regards to the Rotunda dome. Rotunda domes themselves are classical in a general sense, however this one specifically is French in a very particular way. In France, there is a building called the Hôtel des Invalides, the House of the Invalids. It is 3 things. Firstly, it is a home for wounded veterans. It is a military history museum, and it is the final resting place of General Napoleon Bonaparte. This dome is modeled after the one that sits on top of that building. Our dome here is a little over 7 stories high. It's constructed of a steel and wood frame, and the exterior is white terracotta stone. Of course, here in America, terracotta is usually red, roughly the color of a brick or a flower pot. But in England, terracotta is white, and so this terracotta is sourced from England. Here on the floor level, we have 4 statues of famous Kentuckians. Right next to me is, of course, 16th President Abraham Lincoln, issuer of the Emancipation Proclamation, who led us through our nation's Civil War. This statue was gifted to us in 1911 by a local philanthropist by the name of J.B. Speed. Speed was a friend of the Lincoln family and so gifted this to us. Right here we have Vice President Alvin Barkley. Barkley was from the far western part of the state in Graves County near Paducah. He worked as a janitor to get his way through law school. He then went on to serve in our National Congress, even as a Senate Majority Leader. He was vice president under President Harry Truman. He had a bit of an eccentric manner about him. He did not like a lot of the pomp and circumstance that came with high politics. And when he got the nickname The Veep from his grandson, he liked it so well that he asked people to call him that rather than Mr. Vice President. This statue was uniquely, among these 4, not a gift. This one was actually commissioned by the state legislature, and it was unveiled by Vice President Barkley's widow in 1962. These 2 statues right here are very interesting. Neither of them are bronze. They are actually both plaster. They are the cases that were used to make the bronze statues of both men that stand in the Hall of Statuary in Washington, D.C. Every state gets 2 significant people that they feel represent them. And so we have sent, firstly, Henry Clay. Clay was originally from Virginia. He moved to Lexington, just up the road from us here in Frankfort. He opened a criminal law practice, made a name for himself throughout the state as a good attorney. He served in our state legislature and also in our National Congress, another Senate Majority Leader from Kentucky. He went on to be Secretary of State under President John Quincy Adams, and he himself ran for president 3 times, though he was never successful. That statue was gifted to us in 1930 by the Kentucky Bar Association, and that same year, 1930, the Kentucky Medical Association gifted us this statue of Dr. Ephraim McDowell. Dr. McDowell was a frontier physician in the Danville area. If you've been to Danville, it is still very rural today. Back then it was the frontier. It was the absolute edge of civilization. And so, of course, a physician was a key figure in such a time and place. He had 2 distinctions. Firstly, he studied medicine at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, which was a very significant medical college in those times. And secondly, he is the first to perform a daring and dangerous type of abdominal surgery. A woman came to him by the name of Jane Todd Crawford. She had a very large abdominal growth. It was so large, in fact, that another doctor had actually misdiagnosed her as being late-term pregnant. Dr. McDowell knew better, though. He knew that it was not a pregnancy, it was a growth in her abdomen. He just told her the simple facts. Medical science of the day generally considered it to be inoperable. He thought that if he were to attempt a procedure to remove it, she would almost certainly not survive. She knew the risks, and she wanted him to try anyway, so on Christmas morning, he removed a 22.5-pound tumor from her abdomen. Excuse me, I said tumor. We simply refer to it as a growth. Is disputed what it was. So he removed a 22.5-pound growth from her abdomen. The surgery was especially notable because it had to be performed with no anesthesia or antisepsis. As far as we know, Jane Todd Crawford lay on her back on the operating table while Dr. McDowell operated. She, some say, recited psalms out of the Bible, sang hymns that she learned in church. Dr. McDowell completed the operation and she did survive. Dr. McDowell was an attentive cleaner, and like I said, it had to be performed with no antisepsis, but he did have the foresight to wipe down the operating table with water and also to clean out her surgical incision with water. Doing so may have prevented Jane Todd Crawford from contracting an infection. She had a 25-day recovery period, after which time she rode home 60 miles on her own horse. Dr. McDowell would go on to perform 10 more abdominal surgeries similar to that one. And of those 11 total patients, counting Jane Todd Crawford, he would only lose 1. I always like to make mention of the fact that this is a working state capitol building. We do have all 3 of our branches of government in here. Our first floor houses our executive branch, our governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, and attorney general. The second floor houses our judicial branch, so our Supreme Court. And the third floor houses our legislative branch. So both chambers of our legislature, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. With any luck, we'll get to see all 3 today. If you guys are ready, we will proceed to our First Ladies in Miniature and then on to the second floor, or I can take any questions about the first floor, Rotunda Room, or Capitol Building in general before we proceed.
Where did all the marble come from?
So the marble is sourced from different places around the country. The white that you see on the walls and staircases is from Georgia. The gray that I'm standing on right here was sourced from Tennessee. And then this dark green was sourced from Vermont. I actually happen to know also that the marble upon which Abraham Lincoln stands is a Pennsylvania green marble. Any further questions? I'm willing to talk about pretty much anything. All right. If not, we will go see our first ladies in miniature and then go on to our second tour. By Kentucky's women's clubs. They do go all the way back to our very first lady, Susanna Shelby, there in the blue gown. They go oldest to newest, left to right, that pattern repeats on the second shelf, and they wrap around clockwise, like so. They terminate there at Mrs. Bevan in the blue gown. She is our second most recent First Lady. Our current First Lady, Brittany Bashir, is currently being constructed, and when her miniature is complete, she will go there in that empty spot there on the bottom shelf. Each First Lady is wearing the gown that she wore to her husband's inaugural ball. If we don't have a photograph or a portrait of her from that day, she is simply wearing a gown that would have been fashionable at that time. Some of the ladies that are wearing the accurate dress, though, have a swatch of the original fabric worked into their replica. A couple of notable locations. We do have our first female governor, Mrs. Granite Columns, there on the top shelf, in the white gown with the state seal on her name tag. On an aesthetic note, many people admire our enthroned First Ladies for their large and colorful dresses. And many people admire also our mid-20th century First Ladies because their gowns incorporate quite a bit of fur. Feel free to take a look around. As I said, all photography and videos are allowed. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
And they're all one of one, I assume.
I'm sorry?
Each one is unique.
Yes.
They don't make a duplicate somewhere else?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, like I said, Nick is a great guide. I just wanted to mention here, he did mention, I didn't record it, but the doll project was started, I believe, in the 1970s. I love the fact that some of the dolls actually have a piece of the original material on them, too. I wanted to point out, too, when we were in the little concourse area, they had the setup where Andy Bashir gives his daily COVID talk. That was kind of cool seeing that. I just wanted to point that out.
Right here, it says 34th First Lady was never filled. That's correct. The corresponding governor, William Goebel, was a bachelor who took office on his deathbed in 1900. So he died single in office. He was our first and only Kentucky governor, and we hope he remains our only Kentucky governor to be assassinated. And so if you go down to the old state capitol building, there is a statue of him on the front lawn there where he actually fell. And then right over here in the blue gown on the top shelf, you have Anna Mcgofin. She was the wife of Governor Beriah Mcgofin. He himself was a very interesting figure. He was in office when the Civil War broke out, and he was a Confederate sympathizer who wanted Kentucky to remain neutral. The state legislature had other ideas. They voted to declare for the Union. He vetoed their declaration, and then they overrode his veto, which is how Kentucky ended up becoming a Union state. However, there was sufficient Confederate sympathy here in Kentucky to establish a Confederate provisional government, which operated out of Bowling Green. So we actually had both a Union capital and a Confederate capital. And as far as I know, we were the only Confederate state to have two Confederate governors, because our first died at the Battle of Shiloh. Oh. Kentucky sent, yes?
Two joiners from Arizona.
Cool. Welcome to Kentucky.
Thank you.
I will bring you guys back around to the first stop of the tour at the end.
That's fine.
Thanks so much. All right, so as I mentioned, Kentucky sent 70,000 men to fight for the Union and 30,000 to fight for the Confederacy. So a divided state. It's often said of the Civil War, brother against brother, father against son. So here in Kentucky, that was tragically literal. As I was telling these folks, these are our first ladies in miniature. The Kentucky Federation of Women's Clubs gifts these to us. They do go all the way back to our very first, down there on this end in the blue gown. Her name is Susanna Shelby. They wrap around clockwise, like this, and then they terminate at Mrs. Bevan. And the empty spot is reserved for our current First Lady, Brittany Bashir. So I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to look around, and then I will lead you guys up to the second floor. Do you girls have a favorite so far?
Favorite one.
A favorite dress?
My
This one.
That one? That is a nice dress. All right, we'll give our new canary here. They were just using the tour as an excuse to get into the building.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh well.
What did he do once he got there?
I think they showed him out.
Real quick, I just wanted to mention that Nick, our tour guide, just told a great story. The couple from Arizona joined our tour, and then the gentleman in the couple wandered off. And Nick didn't budge. He didn't flinch or anything. The little fella just kind of came back around. I think he was looking at a picture or something. It was no big deal. But then Nick mentioned that he had somebody on the tour a couple of months ago that basically used the tour as an excuse to get into the Capitol and went straight to the governor's office and was tossed immediately. Nick's casualness about that led me to think that, man, there must be some impressive security there. Just wanted to point that out.
Across this road just to cool the space between us. So many people remark on our granite columns. They are very impressive. There are 36 of them here in the Great Hall. Each one weighs 10 tons. They are sourced from Vermont. When they got here, there was no heavy machinery to assist with their installation, so they were put in with a rope and pulley system and a team of oxen. Yep. On either end of the building, you can see our two lunettes, both of Daniel Boone. Here we have an artistic rendition of his party's first sighting of the land of Kentucky. We say artistic rendition because that's not the view he would have actually had. That vantage point is on the cliffs above the river here in Frankfort. And he is standing on the spot where his gravestone is today. And then over here, we have his negotiation with the Cherokee tribe for the acquisition of the land of Kentucky. That event came to be known as the Treaty of Sycamore Shoals. And it is a big part of why Kentucky was open to settlement. And so we have it commemorated here in our capital. If we're ready, we'll go see our state reception room.
Yeah.
So this is our state reception room. Formerly the governor's office. Governor Lawrence Weatherby moved that office downstairs during the 1950s. Today, this occupies primarily a ceremonial function. They sometimes hold press conferences and interviews in here, and they will occasionally sign a bill into law on this table. However, all the pink upholstered furniture in here, as well as the table, are original to the building, making it over 100 years old, so they primarily leave it for a decorative function. The pink upholstery has been restored, but all the wood is untouched. The most impressive piece of furniture in the room, and in my opinion the building, is this central table right here. It is solid Circassian walnut. It weighs about 950 pounds, and the tabletop there is white Italian marble. It's in 4 symmetrical pieces, and the way the artist did that was very impressive. He took the slab and stood it up vertically, and he cut it down the middle on both faces. And so if you look here in the middle there and there, you can see the line where he made that cut. He unfolded it like a book, and that produces that nice symmetrical effect that you see there. The room takes a lot of inspiration from French architecture, most specifically the Palace of Versailles. The room itself is modeled after Queen Marie Antoinette's drawing room in that same palace. The fireplaces are identical to the one in the 1670 Salon of Diane. The chandeliers and mirrors take their inspiration from the Hall of Glass. And then, as a side note, the relief on the side of this table, so you see there the waves and the lion's head and the floral decorations, those are done in the style that was popular during the reign of King Louis XIV of France. The white that you see on the walls is a material called scagliola. It is not true marble, it is a faux marble made from plaster, pigments, gypsum glue, and marble dust. So when you cut marble, a lot of dust comes off, so rather than waste it, they used it to make the scagliola. And here, scagliola is named for its Italian inventor. The murals that you see on the walls were hand-painted in oil by art students from the University of Cincinnati. They are done to imitate the look of woven tapestries, and each one depicts a different scene from ancient history or classical myth. The relief on the ceiling is done in plaster. And then if you look in the seam where the wall meets the ceiling, you'll see a classical motif that repeats throughout the building. That circle is called the egg, and the arrow is called the dart. Does everybody see that? Mm-hmm. The egg represents new life and beginnings, and the dart represents endings and death. Next to one another, life, death, they remind us of how serious the decisions made in this building are. If you look over here to my right, you will see a very nice photo of what the room looked like before all the velvet ropes. Back in those days, we did have a big, beautiful carpet down on the floor. Unfortunately, decades of use wore it down. It's currently rolled up in storage awaiting restoration. But it does afford us the opportunity to admire the beautiful oak floor done in a herringbone pattern. So you can see that here because the rug is gone. We're making good time, and this is a fairly small group, so if anybody would like, I can lead us out to the balcony and we can enjoy the view in the fresh air.
Oh, that'd be great.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So from here, many people admire our floral displays down there on the green. Those complement nicely our floral clock around the back. If you have not seen that, that is very impressive. It is a large electric clock, 20 feet in diameter at the base, and for most of the year it accommodates a floral display. And we're very glad that it's electric because that means that we don't have to wind it. In addition to the floral displays down there, from here you can see a couple of specimens of a quintessentially southern piece of flora. If you look here on either side of the balcony, you will see a couple of our big, beautiful magnolia trees. If you've never been in this part of the country during the late spring or the early summer, you may not have seen the blooms, but those are a real treat to see a magnolia tree covered in these big, beautiful white blooms. And the smell is incredible. From here also, you can see something unique to Frankfort. You can come to this balcony. If you look between these two trees on the cliff, you will see a short white triangle with a flagpole next to it. That is Daniel Boone's gravestone.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And so if you can't see that, I will direct you to a place where you can more easily notice that.
We were there about an hour ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
Daniel Boone live here or work here?
You said there's a better vantage point for it, or is that the only one?
That's really, you kind of have to look through the trees to get that.
I don't know if he's buried.
Daniel Boone?
Oh.
I think he was born in Pennsylvania.
Oh, that is
Pennsylvania.
Simon Kenton, who was a contemporary of his, was born in Virginia.
right there between the. There's a
Yeah.
little curve out almost. Yeah.
And that is a landmark that is at the back of Frankfort Cemetery. You can go and visit that. And it is a wonderful view of Frankfort and the river. What is this? The building with the curved roof? That is the transportation cabinet. If you want a nice photo of the Capitol building itself, if you see this low stone wall, that is on the road. That is a parking lot. You can pull in there. That's a scenic overlook of the Capitol building. Very nice view. If you want a nice photo of the Capitol building, very good place to take it.
Oh.
I wondered about the wreath as we came up, but now I see the green lights, and that.
Right.
Yeah. Were you here when they removed Jefferson Davis?
I was not. Nobody was here except for absolutely essential workers.
So they didn't even announce it.
Right. That was like during the COVID lockdowns.
Yes. Okay.
And so they did that last summer.
Good time to do it.
Right. I was here for the. I was here when he was here.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was not here for his removal.
When who was here?
Jefferson Davis, president of the Confederacy.
Yeah.
He was born here in Kentucky, and we had a statue of him in the Capitol.
Oh.
That empty corner in the rotunda room.
Yeah.
That was where he stood.
Have they thought about?
So they removed him then?
They did last summer.
Okay.
They're going to replace him?
There's talk about it, but nothing official from the actual state government. As it stands currently, I think the statue is in storage. And I have heard, but do not know, like I said, nothing official has come out of state government, but I think the plan might be to move it to the Jefferson Davis Memorial Monument.
That's what I'd heard too, but I didn't know if that had happened yet.
Right.
Or not.
He was born in western Kentucky, and so there's a monument to him out there in Fairview where he was born.
Okay.
Kind of ironic. He and Lincoln were born very close to one another. Lincoln was born in Hodgenville, which is not far from Fairview. They were born less than a year apart. And until it was removed, the Rotunda room, I think, was the only place in the Capitol building where both were represented in the same room. Or the only place in the country, excuse me, where both were represented in the same room. So
Interesting.
I always wonder if in Lexington, if Mary Todd Lincoln and Jefferson Davis ever crossed paths on the street or anything.
they could have.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't have been unheard of.
Yeah.
He went to school at
Transy.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Davis? Interesting. All right, if we're all ready, I will lead us back inside. It's open. All right.
We're good?
Come on in.
Okay.
If anybody would like to get off their feet, the public is welcome to sit anywhere on that side of the rail.
Okay.
So, this is the highest court in the state of Kentucky. As you can see, we have 7 justices here. They are elected, not appointed. The Chief Justice sits there in the center, and the Chief Justice is elected from among the justices by the justices. They serve 8-year terms, and they convene for about 1 week out of the month, and 3 days of that week they spend hearing cases. Otherwise, they are in other parts of the state, seeing to other duties. This is our appellate court, appellate from appeal, meaning that if you believe that your local court gave you an unconstitutional trial, you can submit an appeal here. They will review your case, see if you have any merit to your case, and if they believe so, then you can come in, briefly make your argument, and if they believe that your trial was unconstitutional, your verdict will be overturned, and you'll be free to go. This is one of the subtler yet architecturally more significant rooms in the building. It is the most valuable and irreplaceable for one simple reason. The wood on the walls is Honduran mahogany, and Honduras no longer exports mahogany wood, meaning that if anything should happen to the wood on these walls, then we could not replace it. The ceiling is covered in a metal alloy called Dutch bronze. It is not true bronze. It is a mixture of copper and brass, copper and zinc. The way they created the alloy was by taking a sheet of each, as thin as tissue paper, applying one to the other, and then applying it by hand to the ceiling in 6-inch by 6-inch squares. The egg and dart motif that I mentioned in the state reception room repeats in the creases of the ceiling in here. The chandeliers and candelabras are real brass. A couple of notes about the room. So we do broadcast our cases in here as evidenced by the cameras above the doorway there. I don't think we use C-SPAN, I think we use the internet. Many people inquire about Justice Pryor, the bust there in the back of the room. Justice Pryor was elected to the court, but unfortunately he took sick and passed away before he could begin his duties. So his family gave us that bust, and now he's always in here. And then finally, if you have ever heard the term to pass the bar, that of course comes from the very difficult bar exam, which you must take to become a licensed attorney. Here in Kentucky, it takes on a bit of a double meaning. We take it a little more literally. That rail there that delineates the room, that rail is known as the bar. And when you are recognized, you will begin on one side of the rail and then come around to the other side at some point during the ceremony. And so you will have passed the actual wooden bar in addition to the bar exam. Something that I think might be unique to Kentucky. The only other state that I've heard of doing something similar is Massachusetts, but I don't think it's precisely the same. If we have any questions, I'm happy to take those. Otherwise, we will go up to our legislative chambers.
Yeah, Nick is, again, giving us a heck of a tour. Look at these old phone booths, by the way. He's kind of taking us around through the halls, and they're doing some renovation stuff here. We had a rare opportunity to see the State House in a little bit of a state of clutter, which I thought was a bit of a treat. Also really enjoyed the fact that Nick took us out on the balcony. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. Also enjoyed talking about the removal of the Jefferson Davis statue. That's an interesting topic. And I have always wondered, Davis would have probably ran in some of the same circles as some of the Todd family. And of course, Mary Todd Lincoln, most of her family was CSA, with the exception of her husband. And that's just always one of those, it seems like there would be some speculative fiction out there with Davis and her meeting somewhere on the streets of Lexington. Oh yeah, I also wanted to mention back there a little bit ago, Nick, one of the doors was locked. So he had to send a message to someone to see if they could unlock it. So we did our tour a little bit out of order. And again, it's great. You can see where they've moved some desks and seats out of here. And we're probably seeing this particular area in a state that one rarely gets to see it in, which I thought was pretty cool.
2 legislative chambers. So the way we make our laws here in Kentucky, we have a House of Representatives and a Senate. A bill is voted on in both, and then it can go to the governor to be vetoed or ratified. If he vetoes it, of course the bill is shot down and it has to go back to the legislative chambers to be discussed again. If it is ratified, that means that it is signed into law, and if he takes no action for a long enough amount of time, then it will pass anyway. Here in our Senate, we have 38 senators. Their desks are pulled off to the side right now as part of the renovations that have been ongoing in the 3rd floor and the legislative chambers. However, the room is still architecturally very nice. The yellow that constitutes the walls and the columns is more scagliola, like I mentioned downstairs in the state reception room. This scagliola is done to imitate a specific type of marble called sienna marble. You can see here this beautiful stained glass skylight that comes from the Kokomo, Indiana glass factory. That has been in operation since 1888, and when they are open to the public, you can go there and take that tour. The gallery on either side of the room is open to the public. The public can come in and watch the proceedings. Because seating is rather limited, you do have to contact the Senate attachees, I suppose, about gallery passes. They're free, it's just first come, first served. Something that differentiates us from other senatorial bodies in the rest of the country is the fact that we are not led by a Senate majority leader. So, of course, in most Senates, for example, the National Senate, when the majority party has to elect a leader, that person is known as the Senate Majority Leader. Here in Kentucky, we have a president of the Senate. And so they are elected to a bipartisan vote. So both parties vote on who will be the president of the Senate. You can see their chair up at the head of the room. We have in here also what is probably the most exotic material in the building. If you'll notice this red marble along the doorways, that is all the way from Pakistan. And when we acquired it, Pakistan was not yet its own country. It was simply a region called Kashmir. If we have any questions about our Senate or our Senate chamber, I'm happy to take those. Otherwise, I will check on the House and see if that has been unlocked for us yet. Any questions? Okay. Give me...
There really is no difference between calling yourself a state or calling yourself a commonwealth.
There isn't, no.
This is what you call yourself.
Yeah.
Right. As I understand it, Virginia chose to call themselves a Commonwealth as kind of a throwback almost to the result of the English Civil War. So the English Civil War was between two factions, the parliamentarians and the royalists, about who was going to hold more power in England, the Parliament or the King. And the parliamentarians ended up winning and deposing the king. And so for a couple of decades, England actually wasn't a monarchy, it was a republic. And rather than calling themselves the Kingdom of England, it was called the Commonwealth of England.
Okay.
And that was around the same time that Virginia was being added. We have 38 senators. We have in here 100 representatives. So they represent quite a few less people. The senators represent about 100,000 people, but for the representatives, it is quite a bit less. Because there are so many legislators in here, they have a bit of technology to assist with the process. They have touchscreen computer monitors so that they don't have to keep hundreds of pages of legal documents with them. Behind their monitors, they have 4 buttons, yay and nay, request to speak, and call for a page. Pages are interesting. Those are our state's young people, middle to high school age. They come in, assist with the legislative process. They run small errands for the legislators. It looks like a college application, a job resume, it's an excused absence from school. If you're interested in getting one of your loved ones involved in that, you can contact the Legislative Research Commission. The paint on the walls is more scagliola, as I mentioned, in the State Reception Room and the Senate. You can see the gallery is quite a bit more extensive. It does wrap almost all the way around the room, and so it is quite a bit more spacious with regards to seating. And then finally, and I believe it is the greater of the two, we have another Kokomo, Indiana stained glass skylight in here. And those repeat throughout the Great Hall as well. So there's a major one here in the House, the minor one in the Senate, and then many much smaller ones running the length of the Great Hall. You may have noticed our 2 screens up here. Those are to assist in tallying the votes. So when it comes time to vote, they use the buttons on their desk, and the votes can be counted on these screens here. And that actually cycles through some really lovely photos of Frankfort. So I recommend you spy that out while I'm talking. And then finally, behind the Speaker of the House's chair, we have the Great Seal of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We have a frontiersman and a statesman, the frontiersman on the left, the statesman on the right, shaking hands, surrounded by the words of our state motto, united we stand, divided we fall. And as we were discussing earlier, you can see by the words around the seal that Kentucky is a Commonwealth. As I mentioned, one of only 4 in the country: Kentucky, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. And technically, though it is not an incorporated state, Puerto Rico is also a Commonwealth. So, if we have any questions about our house, I'm happy to take those. Otherwise, I will guide you guys back down to the first floor, and that will conclude the tour.
Yeah, that pretty much ends our tour of the Capitol in Frankfort, Kentucky. I hope you enjoyed that. Nick was a great guide.